Good morning. My name is Rod Kemkes, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church, and I welcome you this morning to our service. Just a couple of brief announcements before we get started. In the order of service, we have coming on the back of the order of service, there's an announcement about the Suquamish Community Kitchen, which Cedars has been doing for a couple of times now, and we've got one coming up on July 10th. We do have a few slots if anyone would like to volunteer to help us. Back on the table there, you can sign up. We also have an online sign up through the Sign Up Genius. So there's that. We also have a couple of boxes back on the back table there for donations for the party that we're having for Zachary and Carolyn Kearns on Thursday. It's Thursday at 5:30 at the Cedars Center. And I think most members and friends should have received the Evite, so if you haven't responded to that, please do. But yeah, we're taking donations for a couple of gifts. One of them is this lovely print that we picked up at the Suquamish Museum by a Suquamish artist. We're going to have that framed. We're also going to get a blanket for Zachary. And then lastly is we have the first official board meeting of our new board on July 16th, next Thursday or next Tuesday. So if anyone wants to attend that. Oh, Carolyn's reminding me there are also 2 cards back there for people to sign for Zachary and Carolyn Kearns. So, welcome.
It's the first Sunday of the month. There I am. So it is. We're going to sing happy birthday to everybody who has a birthday in July. If you have a birthday in July, please stand up. Heather and Rebecca. All right. And my husband, Jeff. Okay. We are going to sing with a G, right? Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear friends. Happy birthday to you.
Good morning. I'm Jenny Weaver. I'm a worship associate with Cedars, and today I'm going to be your service leader. And so I would just like to welcome everyone into this space. And I'm going to ring a little gong for just a moment of taking a deep breath together. So as I ring the gong, just breathe in and then breathe out. Very loud. You are all welcome here into this space of inclusivity and love. And now we will enjoy listening to a prelude, and I'd like to welcome our musician today, Gretchen Janovar, and that is an amazing electric cello that you have. It's amazing. Thank you.
To keep our faces toward change and behave like free spirits in the presence of fate is strength undefeatable. Helen Keller. Broad sweeping change is upon us in our world, in our country, in our church, our neighborhoods, and for the Phillip family in our home. I often reflect on what being a Unitarian Universalist has meant to our family. Bringing our children to Cedars and Bainbridge Unitarian Universalist Fellowship before that has had a lasting effect on all three of them. Our daughter Marina found comfort in grad school by attending the UU Church in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. It felt like home. She got to know the minister, Florence Kaplow, who is from the Northwest and briefly served the Quimper Church in Port Townsend. Lydia lives in Bellingham and has a Unitarian Universalist landlord. They live a few blocks from the Bellingham UU Church and walk to church together on Sundays. She has Unitarian Universalist friends and just recently bumped into a fellow UU young adult at a music festival who grew up at Cedars here with her. And then there's Archer. His grounding in our Unitarian Universalist faith was on display here for a full year, and we are all better for having had him right up here on a weekly basis, sharing his talents, his joy, and personality, all informed by a Unitarian upbringing in this very church. When the election in 2016 occurred, 2 of our 3 children gathered with their Unitarian Universalist friends to witness and experience the unthinkable outcome that has altered the course of history in this country for at least the future generation, probably more, probably longer. Being with other UUs helped cushion the blow of losing the election to Donald Trump. When I look back on what being Unitarian and raising our children in the UU tradition has been like, here's what it has done for our family. Being UU has given us a shared framework that we can lean on in times of strife and great change. Without really naming it, each family member has internalized their Unitarian Universalist upbringing in their own unique way. I see love over judging in my children. I also see judging before loving. It's getting more difficult of late, but we are all working on that one together. It is getting more challenging as we approach the looming cloud of the 2024 presidential election. Despite this, I see each family member displaying their belief in the inherent dignity in all the people they encounter. All 3 of my children are incredibly kind. They all have deep concern for the democratic process and for the earth. After all, they've been reciting the 7 principles for decades now. So, when I look back on this grand experiment that I call the care and feeding of 3 Phillip children grounded in Unitarian Universalist principles and a lot of other stuff, I get very happy when I think about welcoming a new youth into our home. We are hosting an exchange student for a year, starting in late August, like in a month. Her name is Aman. She's 14, and we met her for the first time on Zoom last Wednesday. She lives in Kabul, Pakistan, and will be living with us and attending West Sound Academy this year. We can't wait to meet her in person and bring her to church to meet all of you. I'm imagining the dinner conversations that we'll have in the home stretch of the election after she's somewhat settled in our house and in school. My plan is to follow her lead and to start with the questions she will have for us. If given the opportunity, Jeff and I will share our interpretations of what has happened in the United States in the past 2 decades or so to get us where we are right now. It's actually been about 40 years, but we'll start with the recent past. We will be challenged to ask her questions with facts and restrained emotion, although I will let her know how I feel. It will be an opportunity to find out what a 14-year-old youth from Pakistan has been taught about the United States, and to get a glimpse of what the general take on the United States is in Pakistan. I will listen intently to what she has to say. Regardless of how we view the changes in our government, Aman has worked very hard to earn a spot in an international program and is excited to be attending high school in America. She sees opportunity. We will share that enthusiasm and support her in making this experience a positive one, culturally, educational, and emotionally. I hope to leave Aman with the idea that while it may seem like our values are somehow disappearing right now in the United States, what we believe in, seeking truth for ourselves, celebrating our unique gifts, seeing dignity in all individuals, fair and equal representation, are not lost on this family and the circles we choose to move in. Our beliefs will ground us against the outside tide of negativity and anger that can be seen and heard when we expose ourselves to mainstream media. Living with internalized Unitarian Universalist values will serve as a psychological vaccine against the tide of the right. It will be an interesting and, yes, challenging year, but we got this. I dedicate the lighting of the chalice to greeting change as a Unitarian Universalist, with dignity, with action, with a belief in what is fair, and most of all, hope. Please join me in reciting the affirmation as it is printed in your order of service. As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat all people kindly, because we are one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness, because that is how we will all become the best that we can be. Time for a hymn.
So our first hymn is For All That Is Our Life, number 128. If you'd like to rise and join with me in singing.
I am going to tell you a little story. This is going to be our time for all ages today. And the story is about something that happened to me when I was 15 years old. And even my husband, I don't think, has ever heard this story. I was spending a summer in the rural mountains of Alaska, and I was helping out some hunting guides. And so we would go on horseback, and we'd take clients up into the mountains, and the hunters would hunt for whatever they were hunting, and I would manage the horses at a high base camp, which was really fun. I loved it. I loved horses. I loved the wilderness, and it was great. So although I was 15, I knew a lot about horses, but one thing I did not realize is that horses do not like being the last one left behind. And so when things are getting ready to go, if horses know that it's time to leave, the one that's last is usually thinking, I guess I'm going to get eaten now because I'm last. And so it will do whatever it can to keep up. And so we were getting ready to go, and I was saddling up the horses, and somebody just started going down the trail, and I wasn't quite done, and so I was saddling up, and I was cinching the cinch, and I, tried to get on the horse, and I fell off. And my horse her name was Maud. Maud was very concerned about the fact that she was the last horse left behind, and was not happy that I was not getting on. And she was just, 1,000 pounds of freaking out, and I was scared, really scared. And I wasn't that tall, and I was thinking I couldn't even get on her, so I grabbed onto the saddle as she was starting to run, and I did a cowboy move where I, swung up, and it was terrifying. But she caught up, and I stayed on, and all was well. But I was scared to death. So this comes to my conclusion of this story, which is a quote from John Wayne, the American cowboy actor. Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. And that pretty much sums it up for me, that is exactly what I did, and it worked. And I've used that phrase for a long time. It's just very succinct. That's what it is. Scared to death and saddling up anyway. And so that is the conclusion of our time for all ages. For our centering moment today, I am going to read a meditation on courage and vulnerability, which is written by Douglas Taylor, and this I found on the UUA site, and it spoke to me. So while I read it, you may listen and reflect on this. Meditation on courage and vulnerability. I am learning to let down my guard. We all know about the deep instinct to respond to difficulty and stress with either fight or flight, with force or swift retreat, with decisive attack or prompt withdrawal. When faced with stress or difficulty or challenge, I am learning to let down my guard. I am learning to be vulnerable. I am seeking the courage to be open. I would have my vulnerability be a choice made from my courage rather than my fear. I would have my vulnerability be my strength. May my strength be not found as a hard shell of defense or a sharp weapon of attack. May my strength instead be found in an open stance of kindness and empathy, like a tree bending gracefully in the windstorm. May my strength be found in a willingness to join in the suffering of others, like a forest of trees together in a storm. May I choose to be receptive rather than protected, sharing rather than shielded. In this way, may I face my own suffering and the suffering of others with a nimble capacity to respond with compassion. In this way, may my vulnerability be an invitation for others to meet me in the open field with a yearning for understanding and peace. I know this is a risk. I know I may be hurt. I know things may not go well. But still, I will seek the courage to set aside the closed fist, the stinging retort, the barbed judgment of others. I will seek within myself the strength to stand exposed and unguarded before the world, in the wind, open to difficulty, not because I cannot be any other way, but because I have chosen this better way. I am still learning to be vulnerable. I seek the courage to be so vulnerable. May I have others who can help me to be so courageous. May my example serve others as well as myself, and may my strength be our strength in sharing this life openly with others. Thank you.
Each Sunday morning, we set aside time for joys and sorrows. Joys and sorrows are neither live streamed or recorded, so for those of you at home, please reflect on your own joys and sorrows and know that we hold space for you. If you have a joy or sorrow, please come up. That may not have been shared. Seems like we've shared many this morning, which is great. And a stone in the water for any sorrows that people are holding in their hearts. Know that we do hold space for you.
All right, so our centering hymn is hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
We pass the offering baskets each week at Cedars as a reminder that the offering is symbolic as well as practical. We know that it is through pledges that we build our budget and fund our yearly programs and ministry of worship, pay our staff, and finance the comfort and beauty of our worship space. We know that we could easily submit those pledge checks to the church at any convenient time. But we pass the plate during worship service to make a community expression of thanks for the blessing of abundance, to visibly bring in the harvest at this most cherished hour of our week. Our offering says that the act of giving is as essential as to our spiritual well-being as anything we do here on Sunday mornings. If you're visiting us for the first time, please let the basket pass you by. We are happy simply to have you here as our guest. Will the ushers please step forward with the baskets for the offering? Thank you for your generous gifts.
I would like you to think about a time when things were tough. Think about a time when you needed courage. Everyone has had times that have challenged them, and during those times, when you were presented with particularly rough circumstances, you found courage. How did you find that courage? Different people have different crises that require courage, but each of us has faced something that seemed impossible. It is at those moments in life, when we keep going despite difficulties, that we find something in us that gives us courage. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't have a sacred text that tells us how to find courage. We learn about courage from the stories of others. Sometimes we read of these stories, and sometimes we listen to stories of courage from people that we heard. Our faith tells us that every person has worth and dignity, and we extend that belief into an understanding that each person has a story to tell, in this case, of how they found courage. Each person has fought a battle. Everyone has been scared to death, but saddled up anyway. How do we do it? As many of you know, I grew up as a foster kid in rural Alaska. I was afraid a lot of the time. I needed a lot of courage on a daily basis to get through my life. There were times I wasn't sure I was going to make it. During this time, I spent a lot of time in deep despair, and I didn't have a support network to help me through it. I had very few friends, no family, and foster parents who didn't particularly want me. The misery was profound, and yet I found the courage to tackle it. At the time, I didn't see it as courage. I saw it as stubbornness. I liked thinking of myself as stubborn because I sensed, even as a child, that it was something more useful than serenity. No matter what came next, I was determined not to quit. I used to say to myself, just try and stop me. It was a mantra of sorts, and it helped me rally my courage. I didn't beg God to end my suffering because I knew it wasn't going to end. Instead, I felt deeply that God wept with me. My God didn't offer salvation or forgiveness, but my belief gave me courage to keep going, knowing that I wasn't really alone. I knew the odds of getting out of there and succeeding were against me, but this knowledge just gave me more determination and more stubbornness. I was going to triumph. I was a fierce little warrior, and I now see that I was courageous. The things I learned during this rough childhood were lessons that have served me well. And I've summed up a few of these things in this sermon. The first thing that I learned about courage is that courage is not the absence of fear. Danger and fear of harm is part of life for everyone. It helps keep us alive. If we sense danger, we can take actions to ensure safety, however possible. Sometimes we can experience fear of less dangerous things, like fear of failure or of rejection. Those fears are as real as threats to personal injury, because our lizard brains know that, just like Maud the horse, being alone or without a plan are hazards in themselves. Courage is acknowledging our fears and rising above them. When we are in physical danger and have to act fast, there isn't time for a lot of courage. This brings me to my next point. Courage is not exactly the same thing as bravery. In those instinctive moments of fight, flight, flee, or freeze, we are operating without much thought, which is a good thing. Being brave seems to me to be a rising act that emerges during those intense moments that we must act. Courage is deeper. Bravery is the act of running towards that charging bear, and courage is knowing that tomorrow and the next day and every day after that, you're going to have to face that same bear at the same time and place, and you find a way to do it over and over again. We find the courage to face that bear because running from it is not going to work. And maybe we have a little hope that today the bear won't charge. And that is another thing about courage. Courage cannot exist without some hope. I had hope for my future that I was going to turn 18 and get out of foster care, and I was going to go to college. I kept that vision of attending college in some place that was warm and sunny and far away from Alaska. Although, ironically, I ended up at the University of Oregon, which has a lot of rain, but it was definitely warmer, and there was a lot of sun, too. By picturing myself at college in this warm, imaginary, sunny place, I was able to achieve my vision. I found the courage to face the dark, cold Alaskan winter because I knew that eventually winter would be over. I remember getting on the plane from Anchorage to Eugene, Oregon, by myself on a red-eye flight, going to a place I had never seen before, and I cried pretty much the whole trip. I was excited, elated, thankfully, but mostly terrified. This was not really bravery. This was courage to face the unknown alone and depend on just myself. I had tremendous courage in the face of overwhelming fear, danger, and suffering. Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist, was a prisoner at Auschwitz during World War II, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I reread the book recently. It details Viktor Frankl's experience of living in a concentration camp, and it is an incredible testament to the ability of humans to survive. He says that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how to cope with it, find meaning in it, and rise above it. Here is a quote from the book. "We needed to stop asking about the meaning of life and instead to think of ourselves as those who are being questioned by life daily and hourly. Our answer must consist not in talk and meditation, not in talk and mediation, but in right action and in right conduct." Right action and right conduct. These are important facets of courage, providing hope to others who are suffering. Finding meaning is crucial, and then we have to do the right thing. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to never make mistakes, but we need to put thought into our actions in order to keep moving forward. Helping others, either by sharing our stories or by actions, contributes to the greater good of humanity. We grow when we hear of other people's struggles, and we find inspiration to face our challenges and fears. During his time as a prisoner, Dr. Frankl writes about being asked by his barrack guard to describe to the rest of the barrack why some other prisoners had given up hope and had died, and how they could prevent this from happening to them. Frankl writes that he did not feel up to this challenge. It seemed impossible to him to rise to the challenge of trying to raise the spirits of fellow prisoners, but he did so because he was asked. He told them, and here's another quote, "They must not lose hope, but should keep their courage in the certainty that the hopelessness of our struggle did not detract from its dignity and its meaning. God would hope to find us suffering proudly, not miserably, knowing how to die." The act of helping others was what gave him courage. He didn't know if he would make it out alive, but he inspired those around him by speaking of a higher purpose to find meaning in their suffering. What meaning can there be of suffering if not to help others? The world we live in is filled with conflict, tragedy and horror. Our country is facing a threat to democracy. All over the world, people are living in conditions of hunger and war, while everything around them that they know and love is being destroyed. This seems to be a recurring problem of being human. There is so much pain, and there are no real answers. Our faith does not provide any answers at all, which is why it is so powerful. The answers must come from us. I find courage to face the state of the world because I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I believe that love is the force that binds us all together, and that hope is a part of love. They are hand in hand. When things are at their worst, even when we are all alone and the bear is coming straight for us, we are supported by love and hope. We cannot make everyone get along, and we cannot accept oppression and injustice. For me, it is difficult to think about the challenges that the country faces without feeling anger and hopelessness, but I try to temper that anger and turn it into action. I can't change policies, laws, or elected officials, but I can try to filter my negative feelings through the fabric of Unitarian Universalism. We are called to believe in love, and we can find the courage to love even those who have hurt us. But I feel like if I can hope that maybe we can't actually love those who have hurt us, but I do feel that if we can hope that someone loves them, that is enough. Believing in love gives me courage to face the struggles of the world with hope, even just a little hope. When I was alone as a child, I found courage to keep going, not just because of my desire to attend a sunny college in Oregon, but because I wanted to find love. I knew that there was love out there, and I was determined to find it or have it find me. I had hope that love would surround me, and I was right. It hasn't been all a bed of roses. I have definitely felt the effects of trauma throughout my life, but I have the courage to face the times of difficulty because I have hope, love, and I know how to take right action and right conduct. I help others. I count my blessings. I am grateful for the gifts I have been given, and I find real joy in the beauty of the world. When I have times of trouble, I usually end up finding courage by reflecting on my past and what I endured. I think about the young girl who muttered, "Just try and stop me," to that charging bear. If she could face it again and again, then I can face it too. To the glory of life, amen, and blessed be. And now we will have our closing hymn for the Earth Forever Turning, number 163.
Please repeat after me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth,
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth,
the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our service has ended, and our service to each other has just begun. May it be so.